Welcome to Election Watch 2015. I'm your host, Teresa Wippel. In the studio is Sid Roberts, who is running for position 6, re-election to the Lynnwood City Council. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Would like to have you start by talking a little bit about yourself and how you ended up running for election in 2011, right? And now you're going for a second term. So what's been your involvement in Lynnwood, and why did you decide to run for office?
Well, first of all, I volunteered for an open seat in 2010.
Oh, got it.
And that's a whole different process.
Yes.
I mean, and that seemed pretty simple, but there were 14 other people, or I think it was a total of 14 that volunteered, and that's kind of a beauty contest, and I've never done so well in those, so I didn't make that. But in 2011, I thought, you know, I can just run. And I'd never been in politics at all, and I decided to just go ahead and run for the office. And I really was pretty green. We'd lived in Lynnwood. We've lived in Edmonds and Shoreline and Lynnwood and around the area for about 30 years. But we've been in Lynnwood since 2005, and it was now 2011, and I thought, you know, I should just run for that office. And so I did, and worked real hard. I'm a real estate broker by trade, and so I've always known a little bit about how to get out and meet people, and I did that. And at the time, the city council was pretty dysfunctional, to be real honest with you. I've said to some people it's more like the Jerry Springer show than the city council. I mean, there was a lot of things going on there that weren't very healthy. And I ran just to really say that I could help bring, you know, through my real estate background, negotiation, some collaboration and a different tenor. And I think that class did that. We were able to, I believe, lower the volume and get some work done, and that's really what the voters want us to do. I'm happily married for 32 years. We have 4 great kids, 3 of them that graduated from the University of Washington and on with their careers. And so I'm in a place where you know, I can still serve, and this time, you know, the reason for running again, which is the question, why do you do it again after you
Yes,
after
that
you
is
know,
the question.
The first time around, to be honest with you, the learning curve is about 2 to 3 years. I mean, you really, it takes a while to get to know the lay of the land and that, and about the 2-year point I started feeling more comfortable. And so now we have a lot of things I think at stake that are important, and we still need collaboration and communication and people that can work. You know, it's easy to stand back and have ideas about what government ought to do, but it's a whole nother matter to get in and lead and do something about it. So that's what I hope I've done, and I hope to continue to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we have a few issues that have come up that I'm going to ask you about, and we'll start out talking about the possibility of maybe a future regional fire consolidation. Something that the city has been discussing with Snohomish County Fire District 1, and of course Lynnwood has its own fire department, which a lot of the other nearby cities haven't. They've been consolidating. So what's your position on that idea at this time, if you have one, and what factors would come into play in making a decision on whether it was a good idea?
Well, good decisions are driven by facts and not by predetermining what ought to happen, right? The city council has just begun to look at this, and there has been a lot of discussion out on the street about the city council giving away the fire department and stuff. That's just pretty much not a fact. We are just beginning to look at it, and I'm open. I think that as a city council member, you ought to follow the facts to a conclusion, and you ought to really try not to make up your mind until you get all the facts in. And so that's what I want to do. There is some, to me, there's some good ideas that have been presented so far about, you know, the quote-unquote consolidation. It's called economy of source as opposed to economy of scale, where, you know, if you can consolidate some things, and maybe you can do the job better and more efficiently. So I just want to hear about it. I want to hear everybody's discussion. We've had a work session or two, and myself and Councilmember Ross were appointed to begin the discussions with the fire department, the fire district, we decided early on that all needs to be done in public session. There's no business that's going to go on behind closed doors. Let's just get it out and talk about it. So I would say on a 10-step process, we're at about step 1 of really kind of figuring that out. I'm intrigued, but I want to hear all the story before I make my mind up.
Okay. And of course, one of the factors I'm sure that everybody's thinking about is the fact that, Lynnwood is growing, and as you grow and you have more fire service needs, obviously you've got to figure out a way to cover those costs. And, if the decision is made to continue on with your own fire department, I'm sure that's something that's going to come into play.
Yeah, I'm concerned that we may not be in the future able to fund the fire department as it's currently situated. Remember, Lynnwood is built out horizontally. The growth is going to go vertical.
Yes.
And it's not the Lynnwood that it was in 1975. The growth is going to go up. And there are some buildings in the city center that could be, 20 or 30 stories high. And so we need to be proactive and be on top of this and not go, uh-oh, in the future. And so we just need to look at it. One thing I want to point out I think is important. Lynnwood doesn't go to a fire. That Fire District 1 is not right beside them fighting the fire.
Right.
So we just have to look at this, see where it goes, and I just hope that the citizens will withhold their judgment until all the facts are in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Let's talk a little bit about marijuana.
I don't want to talk about marijuana. That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I didn't inhale. No.
All right, you're on the record
Yeah,
now. Of course, the council took a look at
Yeah.
that issue and decided not to allow marijuana businesses in the
Right.
city limits. Is that something that you think the group might revisit at some point in the future?
Well, I think that we all ought to be willing to look at all issues in the future. One of the things I think is important to understand is the voters voted, pretty substantially to decriminalize marijuana use. Kind of tagged in the fine print in that, was that this business about marijuana stores and marijuana production. I have no data on this, but I'm pretty sure that most people who voted didn't realize that there would be potentially marijuana distribution centers, on the corner, right? So the City of Lynnwood looked at that and along with some legal counsel and decided that maybe it was just in the best interest of Lynnwood not to have marijuana stores. Now, I will say that there are 3 or 4 stores right around the periphery of our town, so I don't think the voters who do want to use marijuana are going to be hindered from obtaining it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Regarding transportation and the roads, all of those issues in
Yeah.
the city, the council recently voted to not put a transportation measure on the ballot
Right.
for the fall, but certainly I'm guessing it would likely come up in the future. Are you at the point where you think you might eventually support a measure for an increased sales tax to take care of some of the roads issues and things like that?
Well, we have big issues with our roads. You and I were chatting before that I was joking actually and said that on some of our roads you just about need a Hummer to get up and down them. They're in very bad shape, and we don't have the money. I mean, it's basically to do anything about the roads. And the way municipal government works, there's a lot of different funds, and most of them are for something, right? So you just can't write a check and fix the roads. When the sales tax issue first came up for the TBD, there was discussion about a 0.2% increase. I almost really, without thinking about it at the council meeting, at the TBD meeting, tried to amend it to 0.1 because I felt like 0.1 might pass. And but I was voted down. It's democracy, right? And the TBD board voted to take a 0.2 to the voters. There wasn't a lot of cheerleading for that. There was some negative advertising against it, and it was defeated. What we have going on right now is community transit is coming for 0.3. We think that Sound Trans will be back next year asking for maybe even more than that. I just am a little concerned that sales tax option will be even be something that the voters will embrace. And then we'll see what happens here in the fall with community transit. But if community transit fails, that will be some data for us to kind of see what to do about it. We have to decide something, and I think where people were thinking on a small sales tax increase is that the people that use the roads would be the ones who would be paying for them. I just don't want the people of Lynnwood to be the sole provider of the resources for the road systems because they're used by a lot of people. We have a lot of traffic in Lynnwood.
Right, right. And
Have you noticed that?
I have noticed
okay,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, every time I drive through Lynnwood. And I think it's important to point out for those who maybe hadn't watched previous programs, other interviews, but the TBD stands for Transportation
Yes,
Benefit
yeah.
District, right?
Or to be determined.
And the council in Lynnwood and in other cities too, many other cities, the council members actually also serve as
Yeah,
the
yes,
Transportation
they do.
Benefit
They
District
do.
members. So when
They
you
do.
use those acronyms,
Yes.
that's what they mean.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
what it means.
Very
Thank
good.
you for
Okay,
clarifying
yeah.
that.
I mean, you and I know that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's a lot of people
Yeah,
who might
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, well, so speaking of another ways to get revenue, one of the things that, has the city looked at a metropolitan park district at all? Is that
Well,
something that you've considered
There's been
as an
some,
option?
there's just been some real basic discussions. That's not even to first base or even
Okay,
close. So
okay,
I would say there's
okay.
anything imminent on that.
Right, and of course, that's another way of being able to take some money and designate it just for parks
Right,
use, right?
right.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good. Well, maybe that's something in the future.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, okay. And then when you're talking about sales tax and the city's reliance on it, some people have criticized the city for being too reliant on sales tax. Do you think that's a fair statement? And if so, what's the answer for diversification of revenue sources?
Well, sales tax is feast or famine. I mean, when the economy's good, sales tax is a wonderful thing. And we do, I forget the numbers, but I think it's about a third of our, gross income, so to speak, is sales tax driven. The interesting thing, though, is that, for instance, community transit gets more of that sales tax dollar than we do. Now, I'm an alternate on their board. I have any issue with community transit, but just important to point out. So sales tax is a wonderful thing when it's going good. Sales tax revenues are back, and that's all going good. But when the economy is not so good, that is where you're really in a dire place. There are only a few things really that you can do to raise revenue within a city. I mean, you can't sell widgets, and so. I don't know the answer to your question, to be honest with you. How would you diversify our income? I do know, though, that some cities, including Edmonds, the number that they get, I think, is more like 10% or a much lower number. So they found ways. And so I think it's a fair point that we are very reliant on sales tax. It would be nice if there were other revenue streams. Just don't know what they are at this point.
Yeah, okay, all right. You talked a little bit about the city's growth, and of course, one of the areas that Lynnwood is seeing more growth is in the ethnic and immigration populations.
Yeah.
What are the ways that maybe some ideas you have that the city can involve those folks in city government and getting more involved in the processes of the city?
It's a good question. I mean, it fascinates me. Two of our kids graduate from Lynnwood High School, and if you go to an event at Lynnwood High School, what you'll see is that the ethnic population is heavily involved in schools. I mean, they are there. They're there for their kids, and they're very, very involved in that. What we see, however, in politics, it doesn't, in the political sort of spectrum, it doesn't seem to translate. And I don't know, I think that a lot of people, if they are immigrant, they are really working hard. My whole street, I mean, if I look out my front door window, our neighbors on the corner from Iran, and then Cambodia, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Norway, Korea, that's down my street. They're all immigrants.
Yeah.
And they have all found a way to come here and work really, really hard and put their kids through college and all that. So there seems to be a little bit of a dichotomy between the involvement in education and job and that kind of thing and politics. Again, sorry not to have all the answers here, but I don't really know. There's been some outreach. I mean, obviously we have a diversity commission. There's some things that are happening. For instance, Lynnwood Today this year is going to be primarily taught in Spanish, mainly targeting Latino folks. So there are some things that can be done. Would really be nice if we had a greater representation in the government, on the city council on that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, somehow figure out how to get those kids involved in government so that
Yeah.
parents will come along,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
something that everybody could think
Yeah.
about. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right. All right, well, here's the question that, of course, was a huge, when I interviewed Lynnwood City Council candidates a few years ago, this was a big deal. I'm interested to see what you think now. The photo red light cameras, do you think that's still something that people you talk to are concerned about, or has it died down? Whether that they should stay or go?
Well, first of all, the red light cameras were voted in before I was ever there. I've never had a chance to actually vote on it. I will say this, that there are a couple things. We could talk about this for about an hour,
Oh,
right?
sure.
Yeah. But just a couple important points that I might make about it. Red light cameras were marketed to the city as a safety device by the vendors. That's kind of true. I mean, behavior has been altered a bit. I mean, there has been less, tickets and all that. But primarily, that's not what red light cameras are. Red light cameras are primarily a very effective law enforcement tool, about kind of like radar, which no longer people complain about. And radar's been around a long, long time. For me, there were two big issues that helped me understand red light cameras and helped me with them. One is that the ticket you get on a red light camera does not count against your driver's license or your insurance. That's kind of big to me. I mean, that's kind of important. The second thing is that, those things, I forgot the second what it is, but the red light cameras themselves, in my view, are technology. We have technology everywhere around us, right? We have Apple Watches, we have technology everywhere. And in 2012, we had a public meeting. And this is, I think, where there was a big change in the attitudes for us. We had a public meeting at the convention, at Lynnwood Convention Center, to address red light cameras. And the media was there. I mean, I was interviewed going in, and we thought this is really going to be a rough crowd. As it turned out, there were about 8 people there, and they just asked a few questions, and that was it.
Right.
And so for us, I guess the way that I'm looking at it, remember the second point, is when you get a traditional ticket, when the city writes a traditional ticket, about a quarter of that goes to the city coffers. Often an officer has to go over and go to court and take the time off, off the street and all that. When a red light infraction is written and paid, the full amount goes to the city. So, and no officer has to go over there, and no officer is put in harm's way. And as you might have heard on the news on Saturday, there was a fatality accident on 36, just 150 yards from our red light cameras. So our streets still need very effective police enforcement. What would I do if the red light camera vote came again? I don't know, but I know it's not very popular, but I lean towards keeping them. I think that the general public has accepted them. Now, I wouldn't want to box myself in the corner on that. I've not had a chance to vote on them and hear the full public input.
Okay, good. All right, well, those are all the questions I have, and I want to give you an opportunity now to look into the camera and address the voters and tell them, what you would like to say about why they should vote for you.
Well, I'd be happy to. Serving on Lynnwood City Council, to me, has been more of a calling, more of it's been a big thing. It's not been just something to add to my career. It's been, I take it very seriously. I read the packets, I attend all the meetings, and one of the things I'm most proud about is that I've really tried to be fair and honest with everybody that I've talked to. Constituents, I always get back to them, I work well with the city administrators, and I think I have the respect. I believe I'm respected by the mayor's office as well. And I hope to be reelected. I'm running against a good man, and the voters will just have to decide. Obviously, I think I'm the best selection here, but I'm a little biased. I will work hard for you, and if I'm reelected, and if I'm not reelected, I will be very proud that I've been able to serve the city in the capacity that I have these last 4 years. Very thankful.
Okay. Well, Sid Roberts, running for re-election to position 6 on the Lynnwood City Council. Thanks very much for coming in.
Well, thank you
Appreciate
for
your
having
time.
me. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
You bet.